It's all about you and not about the destinations. How did we go from pathway mastery over there to now international events? Life is driven by feelings. For me, I can't grow in comfort. It's called submodalities. I remember being in tears and he said, Mr. Steve, you'll be fine, you'll be making it. I've always lived my life through purpose.
It was just the beginning.
It was just the beginning. Coaching somebody, you have to be practicing what you're preaching, but then you can become the observer of you. The people of who they were to who they are to who they're becoming is transformational.
Without that moment of somebody else breaking into my world a little and show me a new direction, I probably wouldn't be sitting here.
What happened in the Pathway Mastery events?
Running through the desert.
Kilimanjaro, selfie time.
You with your thumbs up. I remember that picture.
That's what these events are about. When I was lost, it was Kilimanjaro. It helped me rediscover myself.
You got up and you trained hard again.
But we must be willing to do more. The whole concept of these events is a family initiative because you don't just grow individually, you grow collectively. You start working in the teams in your life. Episode 2, it links into episode 1, but episode 1 was about pathway mastery and understanding the methodology of the pathway mastery. What's episode 2? Something was missing from the pathway mastery and we discovered it. Reach your peak events, international events, creating an event that will give you a memory that will stay with you for the rest of your life, where you'll self-discover and where you'll go on a journey where it's all about you and not about the destinations. How did we arrive there? Making ourselves extremely uncomfortable, walking into a world of the unknown. Something I spoke about in episode 1 was being consciously aware of how you feel and being aware of how you feel against how you want to feel. Episode 1 was about feeling good for no reason at all, and that was the richness of life. I wasn't feeling good. I knew something was missing. How do you know something's missing? The fog was appearing. So what did I do? I became aware that I was lost. I've always had direction in business, but for once in my life, I was lost. I couldn't see the final destination. I couldn't put the jigsaw piece together. And the only way to me do that was to enter the unknown, become uncomfortable, but also to measure myself emotionally, because I knew that if I could go back into the daydream state, the state of alpha, the deep hypnotic state of theta, we do that as children. We go into these states and we dress up in characters and we tell our parents and anybody will listen, this is who I am. I am Superman, believe me. Then you go to a state of gamma, which is a mystical side, where you get an idea just for a split second and then you tell everybody and then you lose sight of that feeling and that mystical place it's taking you somewhere. And then you go to epsilon. That's where you can go into an altered state and actually go to an out-of-body experience and you can see your future self doing that. I was nowhere near able to go into these states at this period of time in my life. Two things happened. I went and spent a day with a friend, Warren Hawke. I thought he was running a marathon. He was swimming a marathon. I was asked to jump onto a boat and I was watching this person swim up the Loch Lomond and swim back down. And it confused me and got me to ask a question of myself. One, why would you do that? But who do you need to become to grow into somebody who will go to the extreme measures? Then after that, I was asked to go and meet a professional football manager. And feeling good about myself, I sat with him and said, 60 months in the pathway mastery will take you to Real Madrid. And when you observe the disbelief in his face of Derek McInnes, I felt good when I left him and I'm driving down the road and then the whisper appeared. Look in the mirror. And as I looked in the mirror, what are you doing? It had a profound effect. When I got home, I put on a pair of trainers because that was in the unknown, that was uncomfortable, and I only managed to run 400 yards. The next thing I knew, I was back home. My son Ryan says, what are you doing? I'm just checking out the top 10 hardest marathons in the world. You don't run, Dad. I know. But Everest Marathon's number 1 and Great Wall of China's number 3. He went away and then he come back. How did you get on? I says, I've signed up. Great Wall of China, 27 weeks' time. And I don't feel in a good place either. But one thing's for sure, what I did, I realised that I had a choice. Who's going with you? And in that moment, I reflected and I said to myself in two timelines, what's important to you? And the number one thing that was important to me was the relationship I have with Leslie. So I signed her up as well. 8.5 kilometre fun race and me doing the full marathon. In that moment, everything changed. That was the starting line of what has brought us to this point here. International events that you will experience, that once you complete them, you won't just self-discover. The messages will stay with you for the rest of your life. When you think about the Great Wall of China Marathon, you think you've been a non-runner. One of the strategies I've always had is, how are you going to get through this? And one of the things that we've always done is support charities. We supported a charity called Finding Your Feet, which then gives you an added accountability. We then had 27 weeks to train for it. How are we going to do that? The thing that we've always done in our lives for the last 3 decades is coach and be coached. You get different outcomes, as I said in episode 1. If you do it on your own, you'll only get to where you can get to through what you know. If you do it with coaches who have either experienced what you're trying to achieve, all you're doing then is modelling, mirroring the strategies that they have. And it takes a lot of stress off you and gives you a firm belief, because they give you clarification and validation of where you were, where you are and where you're heading, and you're on track. And with that support of purpose, of supporting and raising funds for charities who require funds for them to do what they're doing in their roadmap, that gives you the added power, because then what it does is it makes you irrelevant and it makes it about somebody else, which then ties into episode 1. Pathway Mastery is about doing what you can do for others. So this is probably frame 3. So where we're talking about the pre-frame that takes us through to China, to then takes us to China. So you've then been coached, you then get your charity, you then get accountability, you're doing your training. Now we're getting to the point in the story where, because remember, this is all about how did we go from Pathway Mastery over there to now international events? We knew something was missing. In endurance, it demands more of you. And when we had the coaching business, so when we had Pathway Mastery, the reason why I knew there was something missing with all the psychology events that we were attending, there was a pattern appearing. People who did endurance didn't seem to take much notice of psychology, and the people who did psychology didn't seem to have an interest in endurance. And we seen it as an opportunity to put the two together, because then you would evolve and grow. Now we're in China, we're on bus 7A. Everybody had their own bus. You would come out the hotel and you would go on the bus and you would do bus tours. And we had a good group. Bus 7A it was. But what I was noticing was, because I was searching for something, because I'm lost, I was in this deep daydream state. And sometimes I would become more aware and conscious. And what happened was I became more conscious because I heard somebody down the front. And this person down the front of the bus caught my attention, because the more you're quiet, the more you can pay attention to what's around about you. And what you can do with all your senses is you can start engaging with the external environment. And all I could hear was this person talking about not just doing the China event, doing multiple events after it. And all of a sudden, they say opposites attract. But I remember sitting in the bus and saying to myself, I need to get to know this guy, because things are going to change. And what I mean by that is, have you ever noticed that when you're around people, life is driven by feelings, but not more so than who you're around? The environment and the people you surround yourself with creates an energy field within you. We're in an energy field that we're in a country that we've never been to before. That's an unknown. China. We're now doing a marathon. We've never done one before. That's an unknown. But now we're around people that we're never usually around, because these people are growing in different levels, because they're now involved in endurance at another level. And that's where we met Doug. Our life changed and the Pathway Mastery changed the moment we met you and we got to know you in China. But what I'm interested in is, when did you start running?
My earliest memories of running, obviously, are as a child. It comes naturally to children, I think. I know my mom has a picture of me running after my siblings coming home from school when I was 4, and that image has always stuck in me. My dad used to challenge us 3 younger boys every spring to a race across the yard. Looking back now, I realize that race stopped once we beat him. I ran cross country and track in high school, but I didn't really get into long distance running till much later in life. A friend of mine I'd been stationed with during my military service wrote me about finishing a marathon, and we had talked about it when we were stationed together, and I had not completed one. So the first time I ran a marathon was in 2002, right before my 40th birthday. Then didn't run another one for years, 3 or 4 years. I was getting ready to retire from the military, and the Air Force that I was working for offered to let me go to races as long as I recruited. And so I got free time off to go. So I said, yeah, I'll do that, and ran a couple more, and then retired thinking that was kind of all done. But this whole journey that took me around the world and places I couldn't have imagined, or met people that I couldn't have imagined, started in 2010. So about 15, 16 years ago. I too was lacking something. I had retired from the Air Force, looking for direction in life, knew I wanted to travel. This was a good reason to travel, was destination races. And so I put together a list of all the places I'd ever wanted to go when I was a kid or throughout my life to that point, and looked up to see if they had races there. And if they did, that's where I was going. Great Wall of China was one of them. And that's how I met you two.
What if he never wrote the letter?
If my friend John hadn't written me, I had done a run before that. Right after 9/11, a group ran a flag across the country, and they were having people sign up to do different legs because they were not stopping 24/7. The flag left Boston, and a month later was to be in Los Angeles. And about midway through that run, I did a segment in northern Texas. So running had kind of triggered, but I got sick right after that and got very depressed in life. Things weren't going well in a lot of areas. So if he hadn't written to trigger that response, I'm not sure. I've never really thought of that. And I do reach out to him and thank him. So I know it was a trigger for sure. But good question. I without that moment of somebody else kind of breaking into my world a little bit and showing me a new direction, I probably wouldn't be sitting here.
All I'm talking about has been, and I've openly said that, if we're lost, and I've been lost multiple times and or need redirected, maybe that's the word. But when we're over there, we're doing episode 1, and we're talking about understanding pathway mastery methodology, which is all about working out and understanding what's going on within. Because then when we understand more about ourselves, we become much more aware of the external world, which means that if I know that sitting in a bus, I know exactly what's going on, then I become much more aware out in the external world. On that bus, you're sitting down the front and I'm nearer the back. But I'm so tuned in that I can hear every word that you're saying. I can distort everybody around about me and go into this altered state and say, that's either a shepherd or a compass for me. Because now, all of a sudden, the pictures and voices in my head are starting to change, because taking that inspiration from you, just, and I've not really spoke to you at this point, I'm then starting to manifest where it clears the roadmap, so I can start to see things that are in front of me that based upon what I was searching for, which is, how do you go from pathway mastery to find the thing that's missing? And the reason why that is, I was unsettled because I didn't want it to be just a coaching company, because when you have a neuro association to a word, if you say coach, or you say coaching company, or you say coaching company, and you were to go and survey people, they will come up and give you a response. And I wanted the response of what we developed, to be so unique that there would be people saying, when you go there, whatever experience you have, they will do more than what anybody else is willing to do. But you will have an experience that every day it will stay with you for the rest of your life, and you will think about it every moment of your awakened state. And that's exactly what we've created. But it's that thing about meeting you. When you meet people, I say this to companies and boardrooms, when you go into one of the most strategic environments, which is to take your company reviewing the past, the present, and the future, what does the people within that room do to your resonance of vibration and frequency? Does it bring you alive and believe that you can achieve anything, or is people going through the motions? And that's where we've merged the two for people to truly discover. Here's a question. Never asked this, but I mean, how did you feel when I said, oh, by the way, we've got to China and you're going to do an 8.5 kilometre and you're going to China Wall? I mean, how did that make you feel?
Well, to be honest with you, I thought, let's go. Just go. Go and see what happens. That totally took me out of my comfort zone.
Oh, it did. It took two out of comfort zone, because that's what we talked about. It's the unknown, unknown, unknown. You've never trained for something like that. You've never done marathon running. You've never been to China Wall. You've never been to China. And it's that, and it's the state that you go into where you're in that place of uncomfort. For me, it always is. It's where things come through, and it's where I can see or I'm signposted, because you can't, for me, I can't grow in comfort. It just becomes, it's called submodalities, but the subject of experience through sensory language, which creates your story within your mind. Mine's got to always be like an IMAX. It's like going to a cinema and the IMAX is all around the four walls and it's on the ceiling. And sometimes it's like going into the Future Museum yesterday. It's moving as if you're in a shuttle and you're being transported to what you have to do with your life. And it is always about other people. But if you're in comfort, it's black and white, it's small, the pictures are small, the sounds are dull and boring, and you become, it is that feeling of being lost. And that's why it's not just about people and environment or making yourself uncomfortable. The missing piece, which really, really can bring you alive for you to change the story in your head, is who you surround yourself with and who is in your network and who is in your life, whether it's through unconditional love, or whether it's just a network of people that you surround yourself. Think about it when you watch a movie. When you watch a movie of somebody's life and it inspires you, automatically you leave the cinema and you start to reflect what impact that's had on you. That's exactly what was happening when you're on a bus with 7A, because it wasn't just you. They were all exceptional people in bus 7A. Anybody you met that was in that arena was exceptional. So you've been fired up. And when you've been fired up, the next thing you know, I'm sitting in the wall and I'm sitting thinking, I'm starting to see what I have to do. And it was to put these sequence of events. I didn't know exactly what the events were going to be. But one thing I would say is, and you'll remember this, the terrace roof. And when you become lost, and even when I discovered myself on that journey, the Great Wall of China, I remember getting to mile 23 or 24 on the wall the second time round, and there was somebody in the ditch. And I knew I wasn't going to make the time. But I stopped and ran back and got a medic to come up and help him. And I recognised the person because he stood at the starting line. He was a big guy and he stood to the right-hand side of me, and I seen him because there was a picture of me at the starting line looking down. And it may only taken me 10, 15 minutes to go and get somebody to say there's somebody lying in a ditch with absolute exhaustion. But one of the things that when I started kind of pacing, fast walking to back up the wall, that's when another message came through and said, see, wasn't about the finishing line, because your only automatic response was to help this person. And that gave me validation in who I was, because when you get lost in life, sometimes you lose your identity, you forget about your values, your beliefs change. And all these acts that was happening on the wall, even getting to the finishing line and getting a medal, that gives you a superpower. But then when you go around the people that we were networking with, when you're looking at Leslie's reaction to me by doing something that we thought was impossible. When you're hearing the crowd, a crowd, the time I finished, there wasn't many people there.
Ah, there was.
But them cheering when you're
Our
coming
bus
round
was
the
already-
corner gives you a superpower. And then when you cross the line, but then all of a sudden in the terrace bar after the awards night, and then I remembered that it was dipping. And I'm sitting saying, no, it was like, pull the pictures back. No, pull the pictures back. Don't let the movies go on. But then all of a sudden when me and you had an interaction, it was a case of, I know what's going on here and I know we'll catch up. Because there's a question for you. What was it I heard in the bus? Name we were there to do the Great Wall of China Marathon. You've done a number of marathons up to that point. You're now doing the Great Wall of China Marathon. But where were you going straight after the Great Wall of China that you did the sequence of events after that? What were they?
Oh, yeah. That was a remarkable year for me because I had made a huge change. And instead of doing 2, maybe 3 races a year, I set out to do 6 in about 11 weeks, back and forth, some in the U.S., some around the world. And so I had already done 2 of them in the States before coming there, had ran Sunday morning before getting on the plane to China. I ran a half marathon at Disneyland and then went to the airport, got on a plane from China, came back, went to do another one in the States in West Virginia. From there, I went to Tanzania, climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, ran a marathon 2 days later, came back from that on a Tuesday night, washed my clothes, got on a plane Friday for Peru and ran the Inca Trail, which normally takes 4 days to hike and camp. I ran it in about 11 hours. And then a couple months after that, I found myself in Antarctica. And so in the course of 2015 alone, I think I did 8 or 9 marathons.
And that's what I heard on the bus. And then I heard that when you were talking to other people. And the more everything else was blocked out because I'm locked in with you and I'm basically saying, I'm going to find the path. I'm going to find the path with the pathway mastery, but I'm also going to find the path for myself. And when you come back, that's exactly what happened, because once you come back, you said to me, give me time. And you went and did your events, and then I don't think we've missed a month of communication in over 10 years by doing Zoom or some sort of communication. But in that, we called it a 50-50 challenge. And the second one that I set myself was we set ourselves the Kilimanjaro and the Kilimanjaro Marathon. And when I did that event with your support, that was where, when I did the Kilimanjaro Marathon after coming off the mountain, that's where I went to a place that I've never been before. And I mean in my mind. And I remember being supported round it by a local lad. And in the 4th circuit, I remember being in tears. And he said, Mr. Steve, you'll be fine, you'll be making it. See, that's the power I've got. I can go back to actually experience the emotional right in that moment. And I remember hugging him and saying, if you never jumped out of a tree to ask me what I was doing and said you would join me, but the reason why I'm crying is because I now can see the way. It's not just seeing the way. It's a word that I never spoke about in episode 1. How do you find your purpose? I've always lived my life through purpose. Always from the age of 12. There's a difference between purpose and existing. And when I met you, and then the things that even me and Leslie went on to do, because even meeting you, and then we adding the pathway events onto Pathway Mastery, we were then ending up doing half marathons and 5Ks and 10Ks. We were even doing the Santa Dash. We were always close, but we're now becoming closer because we were now entering a field that was the unknown to us. But even going from your support, doing Kilimanjaro and Kilimanjaro Marathon, you were still doing events anyway. You were continuing your journey. You were leading that up to finishing. The last marathon you had mapped in was Athens.
Correct. Yeah, Athens was supposed to be the end, yes.
Yeah.
It was just the beginning.
It was just the beginning. But you had guided me too. We had mapped out all these events leading me up to 50. And every time I was doing the events and training, it was taking me deeper and deeper and deeper, and I was discovering more of what we're to do. The more that we were chatting, the more that I was getting into these states. And I think what's important that links this is we study neurology and studying brain resonance and studying emotional states and the power of love. I know where I can go into a state. I've always liked my own company. I've always been in nature. I've always been still and silent because I'm searching. And when you go inside, things always appear. It's what the book is. The book is 40 years of my life in terms of creation things, but it's about the altered state that you put yourself into. Endurance puts you into a different state. It takes you, people call it, I don't know what they call it a certain mile when you get to the marathon, you get to this dark place.
The wall.
They call it the wall. Or they say if you've not planned an event after the one you've just finished, you hit the wall and you take the dip. And I'm thinking that's what happened to me in the Great Wall of China, and I could feel it. I could feel it, and what I did is I isolated myself. But the point of view of going and then you support me to map out all these events was allowing me on the other side of the lane to then go and do pathway mastery and start creating, because I realised coaching somebody, and I'm going to say this, and I don't want it to sound how I'm saying it. I can say this because I've been coached my whole life by multiple coaches. Sometimes I've got 6 coaches in my life at one time, because I don't think you can support somebody unless you have to be practicing what you're preaching. And when it comes to coaching, if I go back, it was more about how did we discover Reach Your Peak Scotland? How did we discover Reach Your Peak Kilimanjaro? How did we discover Reach Your Peak Everest Base Camp? It's a bigger accountability, because if you're searching for yourself to discover, there's a sign that was outside before we came in here and it said effortless health. It's an Indian woman, and I up to her and I said to her, do you know what that means? And she says, what does it mean to you? And I says, the word that came to my mind right away was freedom. She goes, what are you doing in there? I says, it's about contribution, growth, connection, serving, giving, growing. It's about you being irrelevant in your life, being about other people. But it's about how do you discover the self-inquiry of yourself? How do you discover what's beyond self? And she goes, how do you do that? And I says, observer of you. I said, but then you can become the observer of you. Then you can have future self, and then you can go to the end, just like we talked about the other day. If you go to the end and then you come back, which is what I was doing in endurance, because I wasn't getting frustrated, I was searching. And the more events that we agreed that I would do, the pinnacle one was the Everest Marathon. The number 1 marathon in the world that was on that schedule when I researched it, coming back from Warren and Derek. What are you doing? And the Everest Marathon was number 1. I wasn't an inner fight to challenge myself to do it. It was as if I was on a surfboard and I was gliding through a process that I had to go and do these things that was going to allow me to meet myself at the other side, that was going to show me the way of the pathway mastery. But what I want to ask you, we met in London.
Yes.
You went to Athens, I went to Everest Marathon.
Yes.
We were starting to have an inclination of what we were going to do, because we were starting to create the Reach Your Peak Scotland event, which is a 105 hours event in a week. All psychology, all about understanding yourself, 6 speakers. You were on it for 3 days with 5 other speakers. People had been on the pathway for about 9 months development. And that's to get the brains sped up so that they can understand what goes on in the room. But then they do 6 peaks in 24 hours in Scotland. The people of who they were to who they are to who they're becoming is transformational. But then we get to a point where we look at you and we say, what's after Athens? So what happens from going from doing all the marathons from Athens while we're building the Pathway Mastery events? But you took another leap.
Huge leap. Athens was November 17. I had told myself I'd have a finite list so I'd know when the end was. But along the way, like you've mentioned several different times, you meet people and you listen to them and you listen and your brain starts to resonate to a voice in the room and what they're talking about. And for me, it was in April of 2016 at the North Pole Marathon. And we were kind of stuck there because the ice cracked and we couldn't leave until they scraped out a new runway. Very great adventure. But there was a Indian guy named Archie there who was chatting me up saying that very question. What are you going to do after the marathons are done? I think you should do this. And what he talked about was these multi-day carry your own kit kind of races. And I'm like, no, I'm a street runner. I'm a marathoner. That's what I do. Come to Athens a year and a half later, and Archie's voice is right there saying, you should try this. And so I went and did what I now refer to as a regular ultra, which is like a 50K, 30 miles, 31 miles, and came away from it thinking, no, this is just a marathon with a little bit more. Didn't feel different. And what I had learned with the marathons was that no matter what city I was in, they were feeling the same. I wasn't growing. I wasn't learning anything, or didn't feel I was. And so I started looking into these multi-day events and realized that Archie nailed it. He'd only known me by that point a day and a half, but he knew that the logistics and the planning and the executing and putting yourself, learning to be comfortable, being uncomfortable was all what I really needed and was looking for. And so less than a year later, I was out in the United States Southwest desert for 7 days, trekking with all my food and my sleeping bag on my back, running through the desert.
Name some of the ultras rhyming off. You've done the Sahara.
That first one was called Grand to Grand. You start at the north edge of the north side of the Grand Canyon, and you run up the Grand Escalante, which is Spanish for staircase, and you start out about 6,000 feet and end up over 10,000 feet up. So every day is gradual up every day. From there, the race that had started this whole kind of trend of super ultras called the Marathon des Sables, or MDS. It's a marathon of the sand, and it's the same thing. It's about 250 kilometers over 6.5 days through the Sahara Desert in eastern Morocco. Tried one in the Arctic portion of Norway. That didn't go too well. I got through a day of that. And that was the first time I'd ever had pulled myself out of an event. And that was a reckoning. And we talked about that a lot, you and I, having that experience and how do you apply that. But I've been on every continent with my marathons. I've been on every continent except Antarctica with the ultras. Did just recently the last one that I planned to do about a year ago in southern South Island, New Zealand. So I've done one in Mongolia, Romania, Bolivia.
But it's about defining your life, because that's what we talked about in episode 1. It's about, if you look at just like, I failed, if you want to call it a failure. I don't look at it. When you talk about outcomes, it's just an outcome.
You have to have that experience also.
Oh, I do. I think it was monumental for both of us to that's where words turned into belief, in that I never fail. I win or I learn. I succeed or I learn. I finish or I learn. It's all learning.
We use the word adventure. You use the word adventure. I use the word shepherd. But even the concept of twice I've been taken off a stretcher in Kilimanjaro and in the Everest Marathon. It took me 3 months to recover. That made me go even more into a place of stillness. But I remember the breakthrough of freedom when I could touch the top of Kilimanjaro. I could see it. I was probably about 100 meters away, and we had to turn back because of severe altitude sickness. But I remember being stretchered off, and I've still got the oxygen mask in my office, and I smile every time I touch it. But I remember going down this mountain, and there was 5 of them, and they were running, and I was screaming and asking them in the shop to stop, and they panicked. As they panicked, they stopped because they thought I'd taken a turn for the worst. I got my phone out and said, Kilimanjaro, selfie time. Because
You with your thumbs up. I remember that picture.
but it's the identity you
True
give.
life, it's what happens.
That's because that's what these events are about. If I had stood still and just said, no, we'll just be a coaching company and we'll do a wee bit of innovation with brain mapping, and we never ever made the way into going into that arena of endurance, people, because the endurance part is about people to really discover that the Reach a Peak Scotland event starts from a wish list, and it starts from who were you, who are you, who you're going to become, to finding your passion. And you go through a sequence of events that you get to the end of a graduation after 100 hours where you don't even look the same as the person who started. And then when you go to Kilimanjaro is all about empathy, because it's about you thinking of other people. It's about people understand self, but they're now understanding others. And the Reach a Peak Everest Base Camp is about you discovering how far you can actually go.
That's a big part of the endurance world, I think. You make a great point, Leslie, that no matter what you do, there's elements of it that you can't control.
No, totally.
You can't control the weather. You can't control twisting your ankle necessarily. Things happen.
And you do get a bit disappointed when, like that, you could feel as if you could just touch Kilimanjaro and then you had to get taken away from it. It is quite disappointing, but as you say, you got up and you trained hard again to go back up the next time and done it again.
I think trying to manifest in my brain, or trying to manifest to understand the direction of Pathway Mastery, took me to places where I would turn up at running clubs, and I would turn up and do the half marathons at the weekends, and they would be asking me, what do you want? And I'd say, I want to take part. And then I'd ask them if they would stay behind, and I genuinely meant that. And they would say, why do you want me to wait behind? And I said, because I will be last. I'll come in about an hour after them. But I was there because I wanted to listen. And I wanted to listen to what the runners were saying about nutrition, trainers, what they wore, what their training sessions were, just what was it like in that arena. So you have to put yourself into that arena to really understand it. But then it changed when we did the Conic Hill chapter, which is in this book, and this is probably where we're entering. We've done Reach a Peak Scotland and we've done 6 events. To build a company that's successful, you'll notice one of the things that we did and what we take very seriously is partnership working. And the partners that we have in Tanzania and the partners that we have in Nepal, partners that were willing to understand our methodology. They have people booked through their events. People go over, they go with their guides and they're taken to a destination and they bring them back and they're taken home. And they've always said, but that's what we do. And I remember breaking their pattern because when I contacted Amos, and I obviously know children from 217 Everest Marathon, to break somebody's pattern, to realise that you're serious about a long-term partnership and to get them to understand the methodology was when we went over and we spent 3 days. So we went all the way to Africa to spend 3 days to understand the world of Tanzania, Amos's company, the community, the orphanages, and what more could we do? And what do you think endurance does to an individual?
At its soul, it helps you understand who you are and who you want to be. It breaks you down. It puts you in situations where you have to rely on others and have to rely on yourself to get through. So to me, more than anything else in my life before that, my whole career in the Air Force, all my education, life in a big family with 7 siblings, nothing has reached deeper and taught me more than the last 10 years of doing marathons and ultras about how interconnected we all can and should be in order to have success.
I use the analogy flour in a sieve because I think it refines you as well. you've got to be, you're accountable, because you guys always say, when Kenny, Warren and you talk, we always talk about you deserve to be at the starting line, because that's why you're training for these events. When you're there, you know the starting line, you have done all the work to get to that point. So you think more of the starting line, well, I do more of the starting line than I do the finishing line, because you've done the work. Analysing all the events that I've analysed, and the events that you participated in, the events that Leslie's participated in and I've participated in, I've got this belief. I want to create an event company that's the best in the world, but it's about other people. And what I believe we've created and developed over nearly coming up for 10 years now is, with Reach Your Peak Scotland, it is an event that people describe, and we capture information on video where people say this event will stay with me for the rest of my life, because it's about the deepest levels of within that you can discover about yourself. And that's why we put the 6 mountains at the end in 24 hours, and people quickly realise this has got nothing to do with the mountains. You've done that event.
Oh, it's an exceptional event. And I've told you this multiple times. I put in Google searches for hard endurance events, weird endurance events. What's the wild? Nothing out there combines the 3 days of 16, 17-hour days of pure content and development, and then marries that up with the hardest 24 to 30 hours I think I've experienced trying to get up and down those Scotland hills. So yeah, it's going on, 6-7 years. I still haven't found anything that matches that. The other thing I would say, Stevie, that puts you on the map, puts the mastery on the map, is when Amos's company, his guides, Children's Company and his guides all say, we do this for our job, but when Stevie comes, it's a totally different experience for us, not the clients. For the crew, it's different. When the mastery's in town, they know it's going to be a different event for them. And I think that's where it really opened my eyes that we're creating something unique in the world.
Do you know the principle of pathway mastery, to touch on and follow on what you've said there? Dr. Bandler said something to me. I've been developed and been very fortunate to develop myself under some of the most respected psychologists in the world. And with Dr. Bandler, he said something to me that just grounded me. And he said, we all have the same neurology. It's how we use it. We may come from different cultures, different countries. We watched a program last night that talks about where there's 7,000 languages in the world. But when I'm with people and when I'm with human beings, you don't need to speak the same language as me, because I've spent my whole life assessing a human being in patterns even beyond language. I'm measuring in your energy. And when we designed and created Kilimanjaro and Everest Base Camp, and the reason why I flew over there to spend time with them was to really understand them, but then ask for permission. Can I now have an opportunity to pass on the DNA of what we want to achieve with you, to create an experience for any human being who comes, but we must be willing to do more. I don't want to be deflated by asking somebody, there's a link, sign up, and we'll see you when you arrive. We've experienced that. We don't want to experience that. The part of the international events that links to the Pathway Mastery is in a safe place and with the right support round about you, with multiple coaches that we allow you to tap into as part of the service, is for you to really, really discover, not about the peak of Kilimanjaro or the destination at Everest Base Camp. It's about you understanding more about yourself from an observer's point of view. That's the icing on the cake. That's the candles being lit when you get to the top of these destinations. But it's who you discover on the way and who you think you're going to become for the rest of your life on the way back down. But it's by the deepest respect. When I was lost, it was Kilimanjaro. It helped me rediscover myself, because I went alone. I stayed in the huts, but I told Fred, leave me in isolation. And it was in the moments that I really, really discovered the clear pathway of what I was to do from becoming lost to being seen. And when we think of Kilimanjaro and Everest Base Camp, see the Sherpa or see the porters or see the cooks or see the waiters, it's about seeing the people within the countries. When you take Kilimanjaro as an example, the whole concept of these events has a family initiative to it, where leaders have came into the Pathway Mastery, but then have ended up growing with their families. So there's families who have went to base camp with us. There's families who went up to Kilimanjaro. Us as a family went up Kilimanjaro. So it becomes deeper when you find yourself, but then it becomes a much more deeper insight because your family becomes a tighter unit, because you don't just grow individually, you grow collectively. You start working in the teams in your life. But what I would say is I would finish with this, and it's one of the things that we all talk about. At the back of the brochure, it says, in life, you have 2 lanes. And that's the way I look at life. And when I was lost, that's actually the place I took myself to. And what does that mean? Over in episode 1, we talked about the end. And when you're lost, the concept of me saying, do I go into the unknown? Do I continue to be coached? Do I continue to be supported? Do I continue to be developing myself because it's a way of life? And what I do is I bring this 400-metre track and I put 2 lanes and I put 2 of me in each lane and I go up the stadium and I watch myself. And basically what I do is I watch myself run round the whole of my life, from where I am now for the rest of my life, and I get to the finishing line. But that was me doing it on my own. But then I go to Stevie Kidd in the other lane and I watch all the decisions of the way I've lived my life for the last 4 decades. And I say, I'm going to continue with that the rest of my life. And then I start to imagine the life wheel and the business wheel as this person's going round the running track. And then the magic comes from here. You've got 2 destinations and you've got 2 Stevie Kidds. And the 2 future selves look up at me in the stadium. And all they ask is, what one are you more drawn to? And I'm drawn to the one of how I'm living my life just now. So life, you've got 2 choices. You can either do it alone, but go to the end and feel what you'll feel by meeting that person, or go to the end and meet the person who has multiple avenues of support and you'll lead a different life.